The conflict between Iran and Israel is, honestly, one of the most dangerous rivalries in the Middle East. For many years, these two powerful countries have been locked in a struggle for influence and security. Now, this isn't a fight over land borders like many other conflicts. Instead, it's a deep-seated battle of ideologies, strategic ambitions, and, well, fears. To really understand the current crisis, we have to look back at how their relationship completely changed. It's a story of how two nations that were once partners became sworn enemies, with their contest for power now threatening to pull the entire region into a much larger and more devastating war. Before 1979, Iran and Israel actually had a quiet but functional relationship. Iran, then ruled by the Shah, was a secular monarchy and a key ally of the United States. During this time, the two countries cooperated on military and intelligence matters. They saw a common enemy in some of the Arab states surrounding them. This period of cooperation seems almost impossible to imagine today, given the extreme hostility that now defines their interactions. The Shah's government was more concerned with pan-Arab nationalism than with the Palestinian cause, creating a space for this pragmatic, if not exactly warm, partnership to exist and even thrive behind the scenes. Everything changed with Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979. The Shah was overthrown, and a new religious government led by Ayatollah Khomeini came to power. This new leadership had a completely different worldview. It saw the United States as the great Satan and Israel as the little Satan, an illegitimate state and an outpost of American imperialism right in the heart of the Middle East. From that moment on, Iran's official policy became one of total opposition to Israel's existence. This wasn't just political rhetoric, it was a core part of the new revolutionary identity that Iran projected across the region and the world. This ideological shift created the foundation for the long conflict that followed. For Iran's leaders, opposing Israel is a way to show their leadership of the Islamic world and resist Western influence. For Israel, Iran's government is an existential threat. Israeli leaders worry deeply about Iran's nuclear program, believing it is designed to produce atomic weapons that could be used against them. They also fear Iran's growing influence in neighboring countries like Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. This mutual distrust has fueled a decades-long shadow war, fought through proxies, cyber attacks, and assassinations, which has now, sadly, broken out into the open. For many years, Iran and Israel fought each other indirectly, avoiding a direct, all-out war. This was often called a shadow war, or a proxy war. Iran built a network of allied groups across the Middle East, known as the Axis of Resistance. This network includes powerful organizations like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, as well as militias in Syria and Iraq. Iran provides these groups with money, weapons, and training. These proxies then fight Israel on Iran's behalf, allowing Tehran to challenge its enemy without risking a direct military confrontation, and the massive retaliation that would surely follow from both Israel and its powerful allies. Israel, in turn, has not been a passive victim in this shadow conflict. For years, it has conducted a campaign to counter Iran's influence. This has included hundreds of airstrikes on Iranian-linked targets in Syria, aiming to stop the transfer of advanced weapons to Hezbollah and other groups. Israel has also been accused of carrying out covert operations inside Iran itself. These operations have reportedly included assassinating key Iranian nuclear scientists and launching sophisticated cyber attacks designed to sabotage and slow down Iran's nuclear program. This long and simmering conflict has been a deadly game of chess, with each side making calculated moves to undermine the other. The reason this shadow war was preferred for so long is that both sides understood the grave dangers of a direct conflict. A full-scale war between Iran and Israel would be catastrophic, not just for them but for the entire world. It would disrupt global oil supplies, trigger a massive refugee crisis, and could easily draw in other countries including the United States and major European powers. The potential for uncontrollable escalation meant that both Tehran and Jerusalem were careful to keep their fighting below the threshold of open warfare. They used proxies and covert actions to land blows without starting a fire they couldn't control. However, the unspoken rules of this shadow war began to break down. Tensions steadily grew as Iran's nuclear program advanced and its regional influence expanded. Israel felt that its red lines were being crossed and that Iran was getting too close to building a nuclear weapon. On the other side, Iran felt the increasing pressure of Israeli strikes and international sanctions. The delicate balance that had prevented a direct confrontation for so long was becoming more and more fragile. the stage was being set for a dramatic and dangerous escalation, where the fighting would move out of the shadows and into the open for all the world to see. The long-feared direct conflict finally erupted in June 2025. Citing intelligence that Iran was on the verge of nuclear weapons capability, Israel launched a massive air campaign called Operation Rising Lion. On June 13, Israeli warplanes struck deep inside Iran, targeting key nuclear facilities at Natanz and Fordo, as well as military command centers. This was a dramatic escalation, moving far beyond the previous strategy of limited strikes in Syria. Israel was now directly attacking strategic sites on Iranian soil, a move that made retaliation from Tehran not just likely, but almost certain. The world watched in horror as the shadow war became a real war. Iran's response was swift and furious. It launched its own operation, True Promise 3, unleashing waves of ballistic missiles and explosive drones toward Israel. While many were intercepted by Israeli air defenses, some got through. In a shocking development on June 19, an Iranian missile struck the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, Israel's largest hospital in the south, causing dozens of injuries. This attack on a major civilian facility horrified the international community and hardened Israel's resolve. Iran was demonstrating that it could and would strike back directly, even at sensitive targets, raising the stakes for everyone involved in the escalating crisis. The conflict quickly drew in the United States. President Donald Trump, who had long advocated for a tough stance on Iran, found himself under immense pressure to support his closest ally in the region. After days of intense deliberation, the United States officially joined the conflict. On June 21, American B-2 bombers conducted strikes on 3 of Iran's most important nuclear sites. This American intervention marked a terrifying new phase of the war. It was no longer just a regional conflict between Iran and Israel. It was now a direct military confrontation between the United States and Iran, a scenario that security experts had warned about for decades. The human cost of this escalation has been devastating. In the first few weeks of fighting, hundreds of civilians were killed in both Iran and Israel, with thousands more injured. In Iran, Israeli airstrikes on military targets located in or near urban areas led to significant civilian casualties and widespread displacement. In Israel, Iranian missile barrages caused deaths, injuries, and forced thousands to evacuate their homes near the borders. The violence also had a ripple effect, with continuing Israeli operations in Gaza leading to more Palestinian deaths, further complicating an already tragic and chaotic regional picture. As of late June 2025, the situation remains incredibly volatile. The fighting continues, with both sides exchanging fire daily. Diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the conflict have so far failed. Emergency talks held in Europe broke down as Iran refused to negotiate while under attack, and the United States and Israel showed no signs of halting their military campaign. The United Nations Security Council has held emergency meetings, but with deep divisions among world powers, it has been unable to take decisive action. Major countries, including India, China, and Australia, have been forced to evacuate their citizens from the region, signaling a widespread belief that the situation could get much worse. The conflict has sent shockwaves across the globe. International airports throughout the Middle East have closed, stranding tens of thousands of travelers and crippling regional commerce. The price of oil has spiked amid fears that the fighting could disrupt critical shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf, a vital artery for the world's energy supply. Global leaders are issuing stark warnings about the risk of a wider regional war. There is deep concern that Iran's proxies, particularly Hezbollah, could open a second front against Israel, or that militias in Iraq could target United States forces stationed there, creating a multi-front war that would be nearly impossible to contain. Looking ahead, there are several possible paths this crisis could take, most of them bleak. The most immediate danger is further escalation. If the United States and Israel continue their strikes, Iran may feel compelled to retaliate even more forcefully, potentially targeting United States military bases or international shipping. This could trigger a devastating cycle of attacks and counterattacks, leading to a prolonged and bloody war. The human and economic costs of such a scenario would be immense, destabilizing the entire Middle East for a generation and having profound consequences for global security and the world economy. A peaceful resolution seems distant, but is not impossible. Intense international pressure could eventually force both sides to the negotiating table, but this would require a ceasefire first, something neither side is currently willing to offer. Another possibility is that the conflict could lead to major changes within the region. The intense pressure could weaken Iran's government and its proxies, or it could conversely rally the Iranian people behind their leaders. The only certainty is that the events of June 2025 have fundamentally changed the Middle East. The long and bitter rivalry between Iran and Israel has entered a new and terrifying chapter, and the world is holding its breath to see what comes next.